Hey guys, I'm bringing you today a little bit of my personal story so you get to know a little bit more about myself. Now, this is going to be a two-part video because this first part is going to be a little bit just about myself in terms of history of where I was before I became what I am now. And the second part is going to be a little bit more on who I am, which is really a question that is what I seek, is what I think is the most important thing in any personal seeking, is to know who you are, who is the I. And so that's going to be part two, and it's going to explain a little bit more, like, why do I want to share this? Why do I feel the need and the urge to express myself in this way, which I think is what most of us actually want to do. No matter what we do, we always want to express our views of reality. When we really get into the reason why we're living and we want to live is because we want to express something. So everybody's different, everybody has different views of reality, but in the end, everybody is trying to do the same thing. So that's going to be part two, and is really what I express, what really motivates me to talk and to discern concepts and so on. So, like I said, this part is going to be only my personal story, and that's why I gather you in front of the fire with Oliver here, and we can start. Only, I think what I want to share is only the relevant things that let's say shaped me and made me now be in this path. I was born in the US, believe it or not, even though it's not my main language, English, but I was born in the US in 1982, which was coincidentally a year after the Raw contact started, and it was actually during the Raw contact, which I always find fascinating for some reason. And I left the country when I was approximately 5 years old, 5.5, and I was raised in Venezuela. Venezuela, the country in South America that might have gotten a lot of news lately and a lot of attention because of the regimes that have been lately there, but that's a whole nother story. I was raised in Venezuela for approximately 18 years until I decided to come back to the US, where as you can see, if you're familiar at all with the history of Venezuela, you can see that it has fallen into a pretty decadent society and a financial disaster. It's actually a great example of what not to allow the government to do, which I think is amazing. You know, we can get references to anything, and truly, you know, examples of, you know, what life is, you know, and what we should not do. I think, if anything, my studies in philosophy have taught me what not to do rather than what to do. And you learn a lot more by not doing than by doing. So, in any case, I was raised in Venezuela, and that's why English is a second language to me, because I didn't speak English until I was probably 24 or 23, 24. That's when I came back to the US, and since then I've always, forever I've been interested in language, in my main language, Spanish, and I actually worked as a Spanish redactor and corrector. So I know I have an affinity for languages. Not so, well, let's just say grammar and pronunciation and so on. So the reason why my English might be fluent to a certain degree is because I am just obsessed with language, and I like to understand and pronounce things properly, and this is, you know, the result. So, and of course, reading has been a passion for me. So that's really what, you know, shaped my bilingual expertise, if I can call it that. Now, when I lived in Venezuela, I was, for those who don't know the story of Venezuela, financially, Venezuela was actually a very wealthy country. In the 70s, it was probably one of the most wealthiest country, if not the wealthiest country in South America, and there was abundance like you have no idea. Come the 80s, coincidentally, when I was born, was the beginning of the decay of the economy, and through the decades, the next 2 decades, this exacerbated tremendously to the point that inflation was so big that they had to reduce the digits on the currency. So, you know, barter or exchange was reasonable and not in the millions. So this has been done at least twice, if not thrice. So we see that the economy in Venezuela started going down tremendously. Now, back to 2005, when I came to the US, I realized, because I was born in a middle-class family, but as the 80s and 90s progressed, the middle class became basically a poor family. So I was raised in not a family very wealthy. I wouldn't say, you know, extremely poor, but just having the basic necessities of life. Having house or roof, shelter rather, roof over your head, shelter, and food. And, you know, whatever extra money I could have was, you know, for clothing and for transport, which is, you know, where I needed to go. And so living in these conditions, I always wanted to have a little bit more, but I never wanted to have too much, because I saw the results of normal people with ambition. Normal people, I mean people who simply want to live, who want to have a nice life. That's it. And this didn't happen to me because I didn't have the means. Even though I could work, the money that I could make was barely enough to go to work and have, you know, certain necessities covered. So it wasn't enough for what I needed. And what I wanted at the time was to have simply, you know, able to rent my own place, to have my own food, and living, you know, basic. So at that time I felt the need to come back to the United States, and that's when I got my passport again, because they wouldn't allow you dual citizenship back in the 90s in Venezuela. That changed, so they took away my nationality just to show how dumb, I can't find another word, how dumb the governments are. I simply went to the consulate, got my new passport, and said, okay, I'm gone. So I came back to the United States and I started working here. I realized that just by simply working, I could have a shelter and I could have food. Now, for reasons that I don't need to go deep into, I got married and I had a son. So things started to demand a little bit more of me. So I started to have to work a lot more, and that got me into my corporation career, which was in pharmaceuticals. For over a decade, I worked in pharmaceuticals, and that's what, you know, empowered my American dream of having the house with my son and my wife and the doggy, and simply having, you know, a regular life. Still, I realized that I was working way too much for what I was living. I didn't have any passion other than bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding, which I'll get into in a little bit. But this is really what made me realize that I was investing my life in activities and work that I didn't want to do. So this was a realization that I had in the early 2017, when things changed in the corporation for reasons that I don't need to explain. There were layoffs and so on. I could just sense the lack of humanity that existed in people in a corporation. So I decided I didn't want to work there anymore. So that's where I left my corporate job. Well, I thought I left my corporate job, because I did, but then I got into another corporate job, which I'll get into in a minute. But that was my first say, shaking of reality, in which I said, I need to find something else to do. Now, this wasn't my spiritual awakening, as you'll see in a little bit, but there was a moment where I felt that I just didn't want to continue to work for somebody. I wanted to work for myself. Now, I did mention already that my hobby was bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding, which means no hormones, no rare substances in your body, just simply lifting weights, eating right, and simple supplements, nothing crazy to enhance your body. I always found that tinkering with your body with the wrong substances can wreak havoc in your metabolism. And I was actually interested in nutrition before I got into bodybuilding, because nutrition was really my passion. Training developed into bodybuilding, and I just liked, the feeling of progressing and so on. So the reason why this is relevant is because at the moment I said I want to be a trainer and a coach, and so I did. I developed into a coaching business where I also work in a gym, and that was my second corporate job that I didn't know at the time, because I didn't have a boss. I was just by myself, and it was great until corporation decided that I needed a boss. And at that moment, funny enough, in my previous job, I had to work with, it's very common to find psychopathic behavior in people, especially in managers who have climbed the ladder to a degree, which have no emotions. They have no regards for anybody, no matter how long you have been working or what you have done. It has to do with production and making what you have to do. You are a cog in the system. It's, in a way, it's almost like the consciousness of enslaving people is still present in these corporations. And for those of you who follow me in the Law of One and know how the negative philosophy works, you know that slavery just has different shades, and it's a matter of mentality and not so much of physicality. So in any case, I got a new boss, a new manager. Actually, I got a manager and a boss, and that made me trigger again to say, why am I working again for a corporation when I can work for myself? I realized when I left my pharmaceutical job that by doing what I was doing now, I could only make half of what I was making in terms of money, which was fine with me because I didn't care anymore about sustaining a life that was, I didn't have a wealthy lifestyle, but I just reduced my lifestyle a little bit more to the basic needs. I don't even know how I adjusted. I just didn't have luxuries. I simply worked for, and I loved what I was doing, so it was fine with me. I had enough money to sustain, to pay, my mortgage and my car loan and so on, like just the basic needs. And so I was fine. I was good with that. So I realized that now, without this job, I couldn't make enough money, and I said, well, this is the last time I'm working for a corporation, so I am just going to do what I like. Now, at that time, 2019 is when I had my spiritual awakening, just almost a year before I stopped working at the gym and as a coach in general. And you can see, I can see in the chain of events in my life how things happen for me to slowly get into what I'm doing now, which is really the last month that I work at the gym. And this time I really quit because I realized that I didn't want to work for a corporation anymore. That's when things happen, and I decided to open, this channel. Actually, I started my Spanish channel first, and then as a result, I wanted to communicate this in English too. So I did it in English, and this is, the result of that impulse that I had when I left my job. And I said, this is what I want to do. And even though I don't make much money here, and I have ideas of what I want to do, and let's say simply provide value to people, so I can also make a living out of this. It wasn't my idea, and it's been 2 years already since I started this, and I'm here. I'm still doing what I love, because I just think this is me. This is what I do, and I've never felt so in line, not identified, but in line with what I am, and that is what I'm doing now. So that is so far my story. I'll come back to this part at the end, but I left out one part, which is spirituality. When I was a teenager, up until I was a teenager, I grew up in a Catholic environment, which is Christian by default, and I had my baptism, and I had my communion, and that was the end of it. When I was approximately 11, 12 years old, I discovered science, and I realized that none of that was really was true to me, and science became, even though I didn't know at the time, it became my religion. I simply didn't accept anything that was metaphysical or spiritual or anything. I neglected completely that dimension, which is the other half of our reality. And after that, I decided that I didn't want to believe anymore on anything, and I put all religions into the same box, and I said, this is all wishful thinking that humans are inclined to do because of their psychology. And it wasn't until 2019 when I actually had my awakening, my spiritual awakening, and I discovered that there is in fact something else. That led me to find the law of one, which I'm pretty much known at this time of recording the video. The law of one was what explained to me this metaphysical world that I discovered with plant medicine, because my spiritual awakening was with DMT basically, but it's not smoked DMT for those who know. It was consumed DMT, but it wasn't ayahuasca. It was a different mixture. It was plant medicine, as we call it, that contained DMT. And so this opened up a different reality, and to me it was, okay, first I need to know what happened to me, and I started getting into psychedelics as a study, rather, not exploring. I didn't explore too much with psychedelics. I only did it when the opportunity came up, and it wasn't just a handful of times, not many. During my my first 2 years, which was 2019, 2020. Actually, in 2019 is when I had approximately 4 psychedelic experiences that were meaningful, actually. And I simply was interested in what was happening in the mind. That led me to know, or to learn about the law of one. And with the law of one, I just simply discovered the blueprint of reality, not only the physical or the metaphysical reality, but the physical too. It explained everything, and that's why you can see that my passion led me into interpreting the law of one. And so that is that side. Finally, one thing led to another. I found what is called Advaita, or the non-dual approach to consciousness, that only consciousness model, and that has fascinated me because it also fits into everything else that I see, and it's, to me, the ultimate way to see this reality. And not because it's a dogma, not because it's something that was because somebody said it, but it's because it's empirical. You can actually test this, and in fact, like Rupert Spira always say, it is the only way in which you can test reality. It is the only way. Everything else is an objective reality, which changes. And we know that it changes. So we cannot find reality outside, we find it inside. And this is, what's my passion right now, trying to communicate everything that I know. But that's going to be part 2 of this, because it's not really my personal story, but what I can feel that I am, and what's in line with me. So the last part that I wanted to say is that I decided to do this for the rest of my life. Something simply happens. It's not like you make a decision. It's just that you know that this is what you want to do. This is what you have to do. You have to do it because there is no other choice. The other choice is to delude myself into thinking that I'm something else. But this is what comes naturally, my expression, the way I want to communicate things. And it really is, and I'll repeat this in the second part, this just becomes something that you are. And by being it, you need to share it. You want to share it. You just desire to express yourself. So my life has turned into this. It's just me talking about these concepts, and actually something that can never be expressed, which is the true reality of our existence, or of our beingness, the true nature of who we are, which can never be expressed, but thankfully it can be actually talked about a lot. And that's what I want to do. That's what I'm doing, and that's what I'll continue to do. So that's it. I'll see you in the next part, where I'll explain a little bit more, and I'll feed this fire a little bit more.